authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me tonight is going to be Ayla Ashad. And we're going to be discussing her newest book, The Call of the Soul. And this is going to be like her second book out there. She also wrote a book not long ago, or too long ago, titled 34 Stress Busters. So we're going to probably touch bases on that one at least briefly. Now, if anybody would like to call in and ask questions, the number is 832-632-7904. If y'all would like to join the chat room, those of you listening at iTunes or at another website or something, you can come to www.talknowradio.com, and the sign up is free. And just today, right underneath the, right above the chat room there, I put a link to the sign-up page as well as a link to the instructions on how to sign up for anybody that might have trouble getting signed up and getting into the site. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about Ayla, I said that wrong. You can go to www.aylaspeaks.com, and she has more information there. I think she has contact information there. Tells you a little bit more about her books and what all she's doing over there. If y'all decide y'all are interested in buying the book, just scroll down underneath the chat room there, and further down you will see her picture, her book cover, the show description, and below that you will see a link to where you can purchase the book on Amazon. And in a little bit we're going to tell you a little bit more about some of the other places that you can purchase it. And Ayla, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to talk with you, Royce.
Well, it's great to have you on the show for the first time, and with any luck at all, this won't be the last time. I'm pretty sure you're going to have more books coming out. Or no, but necessarily have to be about a book to come in anytime you're ready, too.
All right. That would be great.
But, right quick, why don't you tell us exactly what got you interested in this here particular book, The Call of the Soul?
Well, I have been through many different transformational processes. I've been through therapy. I've been through a process called the Diamond Heart Approach, and I've been through rebirthing in the desert and many different things. And through that process, what occurred to me as I've meditated and just kind of been reflective is that we're often told that the ego is what we have to repress or push against or try to do something with it in order to become more spiritual. But the truth, as I've realized it, is that the ego is really trying to help us. And so I've had a couple of experiences where I've learned that the ego actually loves the soul, is part of the soul, the soul's experience, and that if we make peace with it, we really make peace with a big part of ourselves, and that goes a long way to helping our self-esteem. And I think self-esteem's been a real issue for a lot of people that I work with. And so this just kind of evolved. I originally thought I would call it The Ego and the Soul, a love story, because it is a love story, and that ended up becoming, I think, chapter 6. And so in the process, it became bigger than just that part of it.
Now, when I was reading your book, one of the things that stood out in front of me really loud and clear is that you did something that few people that write these kind of books do, and that is you kind of gave the reader an idea of what the soul does and, you know, how you developed it and what have you. A lot of people are unaware of the fact, for example, that the soul develops after birth. Most people think that, the ego, think that you're born with it, in other words. And in your book, you say that your life experiences is what helps you develop this personality or this ego.
Right.
And you tell us a little something about that?
Yeah. What happens is we're really purely soul, except for our physical body, which we come with. But it's the experiences that soul has in the world, even in utero, and then in the birth process, and then after birth, right up until what we call the age of reason, which is about 7. So in the first at least 5 years of life, most of what happens to us is what we create an ego out of. And the ego is the method we use to protect ourselves, to help us to live in the world and feel a little safer. Because we have, as children, we have all these experiences that don't make any sense to us. And so some of them can be frightening, and the ego forms out of our personal perspective on whatever's happened to us. And so that's how that ego forms. I don't think we're born with the ego itself. I think it forms out of our experience.
Okay. And one of the things you're also bringing out in your book is not only does it develop in early life, but it dictates a lot of your actions and the things you say and do as you get into adult years and continue through life.
Right, because it's sort of set in place by the age of 5 or 6 or 7, and at that point we've decided, from our little child perspective, we've decided how the world works and what we have to do to stay safe in it. So if that means, being not getting out and meeting new people, or if that means being careful what you say to people, or whatever it might mean, or it might mean, push against them before they attack you, right? It could mean anything. So that ego forms our protective mechanism, and in psychology they call it defense mechanisms. And so we decide early how to do that. Once we've got that in place, we don't really change it. It stays the same pretty much until something happens in our life that causes us to ask the question again, who am I really, and what is my life about? And we might do that in adolescence, and at that point, depending on what happens then, we might move in a new direction, or we might stay with the conformity. And then at midlife is another natural time we do that. But then if something happens to you, like you're in a life-threatening situation, or you have a near-death experience, or somebody close to you dies, or you lose your job, it shakes up your ego, and you have an opportunity to change it. And so at that point, we can restructure that ego. Ego structures out of experience. We generally repeat our experiences over and over again. Marry the same kind of people, get in the same kind of relationships. We don't change much until we are forced to. And at that point, we have an opportunity to recondition the ego and help it to catch up with the fact that we've grown up, we've changed. We're not the babies we used to be.
Okay. Now, why do you suppose it is that most people will go through so much of their life and never do anything to change their ego? I mean, because my experience is, at least until you get to a certain stage in life, a lot of people I don't think are even aware of the ego that the role plays in their everyday life. And what I'm getting at, do you think maybe that people just are not aware of the negative impact that their ego and the training that it has given them could be, causing in their life?
No, I don't think most of us are aware of that. I don't think we're aware that we have even options. Most of us go through life thinking this is just the way it is, and our perspective is the truth. The truth is how you see it. And so we say, well, that's just the way it is. Men can't be trusted, or women will use you for everything you're worth. Whatever we've come up with, that is like a belief that's so true to us. So we don't even question it, much less think about changing it. We don't question it until it's really causing us enough distress that we have to. We have to do something different. And that's when usually we'll find someone to help us, either a therapist or a counselor or a spiritual, perspective, whatever it is, that helps us to make a change.
Do you suppose this could be the reason why there's more people in therapy, it seems like, than what are not in therapy?
Well, consciousness has been raising, I think. The more people that grow up and learn more about how they can take charge of their life, then it's like a rising tide rises all ships. So, more people do this, the more people think about doing it. When my parents were, raising me, therapy was not even something anybody thought about. And here, many of us are thinking about finding counselors, and now even in the new category of coach, somebody who just helps you through a situation. So more of us are willing to get help.
Well, I tell you, I've said to many people over the course of my life that, in all honesty, if a person is not really ready to look into their soul, look into their inner self, and pull out, ask, why am I doing these things, that there's really little that therapy can actually do for them. I think the object of therapy is supposed to guide people into this kind of introspect, but so much of the time I think I've been in these groups where people talk about their problems, but they never go no farther than to look for sympathy, for example, and there's little introspection going on here, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's a good point. No, we really have to want to know the truth. That's the people who constantly read books, and probably people who listen to your show, we kind of call ourselves seekers. Okay, we're always looking for the truth. What's really true? And those are the folks that are more inclined to make these changes. For a lot of people, they're just comfortable. They just figure that the payoff is in the next life. It's not here now. Life is tough. Life is difficult. You do the best you can, and you get your payoff in the next life. Well, what I've discovered is that's not necessarily true. That, in fact, this is a divine life that we live right now, and if you can begin to make those shifts in your perspective, you can really love your life and enjoy it well into old age. And I think that's part of why a lot of people are doing this now, too, is that so many of us are baby boomers. And we realize we're going to live a long time. And, we get to the midlife point, and you go, well, how do I want to live the rest of my life? What's really important to me? And so we start to ask those important questions.
You said something that kind of got my attention about people. What was I going to think of? It led back to what I thought about the church. People thinking that this is all there is in this life. It'll be better in the next life. Because, my dad was a preacher. I was a Sunday school teacher. I got away from religion and went into spirituality. But, a lot of people, they do go to church, and they're taught about being good, you go to heaven, being bad, you go to hell. And wouldn't that just kind of seem to feed this mindset of it being better in the afterlife than it would be here? I'm already just prepared for this life. This is what we're stuck with until we go to heaven?
Yeah, I remember one day seeing, and I've seen this many times, that little adage, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? And I've come to realize that's a really depressing idea. The idea that life gives you lemons and you just have to make the best of it. I think life is amazing and miraculous. From the minute I wake up in the morning, I think, today, now this wasn't always the case. I was pretty depressed. I was a depressed child, and that's when I started asking those questions. Why am I here and what's this about? So when I get up in the morning now, though, it's like, oh, thank you for another day. So that was a shift. That was a big shift that I went through, to really have that sense of everything at every moment is just miraculous and awesome. And most people are not living that way. They're living in a world that they think is just terrible, and they just have to survive rather than thrive. And I think what people don't understand is you can thrive. Now, what you're doing when you do this, and I've warned people, and it's in the book, you have to understand that the rest of the world is not going to see it the way you see it. and you're going to be looking a little different, and you may lose a few friends that, like things the way they are and just kind of want to stay where they are. They don't want to change. But then you will attract a lot of new friends who like you the way you are, who like the authenticity, who like the fact that you're different and that you're acting on your unique gifts that you brought to the world. And those are the people that it's very rewarding to live your life around.
Yeah, that's one of the lessons I think I learned early on before I even got fully grown, is that the best bet you can do is to be yourself, no matter who approves, who does not approve. Answer to nobody but God. And other than that, lay it out there for an open book and tell everybody this is who I am. Take it or leave it, because that's the only way you're really going to find out who likes you for who you really are.
That's right. That's right. And it's much more relaxing and less stressful to just live life the way you are. So what we normally do, this ego of ours, this defensiveness, is very stressful because you have to always be on guard. You know, you're always afraid of who's going to dislike you or who's going to attack you or whatever it is. And when you're living that way, it's pretty stressful. You're always worried about what could happen.
And that's one of the things I think you mentioned, or not that exact thing, but you talked about something similar in the book about, people's egos convincing them that unless they do this or believe this or, whatever the case may be, they're not going to be liked. And then if they do decide to make a change for the better or to be more authentic, they'll start getting these here thoughts from the ego about, if you do that, nobody's going to have nothing to do with you, in other words.
Right. You'll be alone. And that is the fear that most of us have, is that we'll be alone and lonely and no one will be involved with us. But this comes from that very young child, you see. In childhood, we are dependent on our parents. And if they are unhappy with us, life is not happy. Life is dangerous. It can be dangerous or it can just be unpleasant. You go to your room, sit still, be quiet. Whatever that is, mom's not happy. And so in my case, I did a lot to try to please my parents. I was a firstborn child, which many of us as firstborns, that's exactly what we do. And so that just carries into adulthood where you're trying to please everybody. And you can't please everyone, right? So every time someone's not happy, I use an example in the book where, as a speaker, I would go through those evaluations at the end of the presentation. And it would be 0 to 5, 5 being the best, mark. Okay, so I go through and I go 5, 5, 5, 5, 4. And I would focus on that 4, like, what's wrong? What didn't this person like? What do I need to change? Right? So I'm starting to mold myself around trying to please everyone. And of course you can't do that. And so what are you doing? You're trying to shape yourself into some format that's going to be totally acceptable all the way across the board. Well, it didn't work. I did good presentations. The information was great, but the passion wasn't there. The personality wasn't there. The energy wasn't there. And so it wasn't quite the same as once I learned that wasn't what I had to focus on, just focus on presenting what felt right and good and truthful. Well, now more people like it, and there are a few people who don't, but there are always going to be a few people who don't. And now it doesn't worry me anymore.
Yeah, that there one you're talking about, trying to do things to make everybody like you. That's the one I think you found out the hard way doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is everybody is way too different. If you keep your hair short, people are going to, complain about that. If you make your hair long, they're going to complain about that. I mean,
exactly.
This depends on which group you're looking at the time.
It's interesting because I have a very good friend right now, actually. She's a coach also, and we exchange coaching with one another. And one of the first things she said to me after we got to know each other was, I thought you were very aloof and kind of constrained and very arrogant because I wasn't letting down and just being natural and being myself. And here, now that she knew, she said, I like you. So I'm glad that you stopped doing that. So it's really kind of cool because you're going to find that there are people who actually like you much better just the way you are.
Yeah, I mean, unless, of course, you're some kind of a jerk, it should be true, but I don't know many people are, at nature a jerk, in other words. Most people that have that kind of personality, they got their way by being picked on as kids and stuff like that.
Exactly. That becomes the defense, you see. That becomes their defense. We push you away before you can push me away. And that's something that I have a child that did that had been through several foster care situations before she came to me as an adoptive parent and my husband. And so she was already very closed and not connecting. It was hard to bond. And she would, in school, to have a good friend and then have an argument with that person to push them away before they could push her away. So she just had it very early embedded that people leave you. You see, you get change, you connect with people, and then they disappear. You see, but that was before the age of 9 months. So
yeah,
this isn't always logical and rational. You see, this isn't something we can always even remember why that happens. Why do we do that? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I've actually heard people tell me they would reach out and love somebody or like somebody, but every time they do, the person leaves them or they die or, something like that. So they try to keep everybody at a distance.
Right. And what they don't understand, and this is what I work with people in coaching or even in my workshops, is helping people to understand that there was a moment when that happened and you were so young and it wasn't really rational or logical. I talk about a story in the book where my father and I were playing, and he was building with blocks, and like a normal little 1.5, 2-year-old, I'm knocking them down and laughing, and naturally I was probably tired, and you know how a child gets tired, they get a little hysterical, and they laugh uncontrollably. My mother came in and said she should be taking a nap. She walks out of the room, he puts me in the crib, and he walks out of the room, and the door closes. Well, now I'm just 1.5, 2 years old, and I just cried and cried and cried because now that playtime was over instantly, like abruptly. And in my little baby mind, I made up that don't ever get too excited. People will leave you. People won't like it. They'll abandon you. And so that's part of why I didn't get very enthusiastic and impassioned in my presentations, because I would be afraid, people wouldn't like it and they'd leave. They'd walk out. So this comes from a very early experience that didn't make any sense at all at the time, And so this is how we create all of these things. We create them from a child's perspective, not from and you might, at 42 or 52, you say to yourself, why do I do that? Why do I always do that? And if you're asking yourself that question, there's probably an early experience that is the reason.
Maybe perhaps that's one of the functions of the downside of life or the negative side of life, to bring people to a point that they're willing to, start asking these questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I think it is. We can't know joy until we know the pain, right? And if I often say to people, I have a very high tolerance. I hardly ever take Tylenol or any kind of painkiller. I have a high tolerance for physical pain, but give me emotional pain or psychological pain, and I have to find out why I'm in that, and I have to fix it. And so that's why I've taken this path.
I don't know. I'm the kind of person you can hit me on the head with a hammer, and I wouldn't feel it. But, boy, you stick a needle in me, I scream like a baby.
Yeah, that's why we make a change. We make a change because we're in pain. And that pain can come from any number of directions.
Yeah, maybe, but I think from what I've noticed in life, it seems like the emotional pain does more changes than the physical pain does.
Well, some people come to this through physical pain. I work with a lot of people. Being a nurse, I work with people who have pain that's really stuck in their body. I started out asking the question, what causes us stress? because my instructor in school said 85% of all disease and illness is due to stress. So I started out trying to understand stress and how that affects us physically. And I've done a lot of work with people who have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, multiple sclerosis, pain in the body. And so much of the pain in the body is psychological pain that's been kind of stuck. We've learned about two ways that we respond to stress: fight and flight. So you can push against and create war, or you can hide and be an introvert. But then there's one more way that we respond to stress, and that's freeze. And if you freeze, where you're stuck, you don't know which way to go, the pain gets stuck in the body. And so I've been working with a lot of people there, and usually there's an incident that happened within the year before those symptoms set in that caused that pain to just get stuck there. And so we can work with moving the pain out of the way.
Really? Because my wife
has... It's a defense just like anything else.
My wife has fibromyalgia. Maybe she's got some pain due to, some kind of a stress buildup.
I wouldn't doubt it. What they found is that within the year before the pain set in, there was some event that was traumatic, whether it was an accident or someone else died or whatever might have happened. Ask her to think about that. Within the year before she started to get symptoms, what happened that was a major trauma in her life? And I would be willing to bet there's something there. And if and I use the emotional freedom technique, which is a acupressure tapping technique, and we can usually release some of that pain.
Okay, I'll mention that to her when she gets back from church.
Yeah.
She's gone to Wednesday night church. She does this every Wednesday. That's why I chose Wednesday for my show.
Good idea.
But at any rate, I was going to also ask you about, when it comes to the ego, does it do any harm for the people that say, well, this is it, this is all life's going to be, and they never try to do anything to, look into it and see if the ego plays a role or not?
Well, I mean, that is probably the majority of the population does that. They don't really have a clue. Does it harm them? Well, it limits them. Let's put it this way. You don't have the freedom to make free choices and to be choosing the life you want, which we do have access to and we can do as human beings. And so you're limited and you're feeling not free. Now, we can make up all kinds of reasons why that is, and all kinds of, like the idea that, well, our payoff is in the next life. So you suffer in this life and then pay off. So that's the rationale for staying with that and not changing it. So does it harm them? Well, yeah, it does, because they don't have the freedom to enjoy the life that they've got.
Okay. Now, I'm going to say that there's probably no good that ever comes out of it, given the fact that it's being brought on from a child's perspective, which is inexperienced and therefore not likely to have a good ending.
True. Yeah, true. And so our ego doesn't realize we've grown up, basically. It's still protecting the baby ego, the baby soul. And so now we're adults. We know how to protect ourselves in the world. We know how to pay our bills. We know how to, keep things running smoothly. And we really don't need all of that chatter in our head that says you're not good enough, you didn't do it exactly right, you weren't perfect. A lot of people have this whole concept of, I'm not perfect and I need to be perfect, and we keep striving to try to be more perfect, and that there's no way to do it because we know nobody's perfect. So it's a catch-22. We're stuck in this circular pain of trying to do better and never getting there. And so you feel really bad about yourself. I think self-esteem issues are the core of most of the problems we have in the world, is people just don't feel good about themselves. Because if I feel good about myself, Royce, I don't have to take anything from you, do I? I don't have to put you down. I don't have to, I'm not feeling like I need to take anything away from you. I've got everything I need, right? So I think that's the source of most of the problems we have, is the feeling that I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, and I've got to,